officials claim the satanic cults operate in nearly every community in America. Young children from Oregon and Massachusetts say they've been raped, tortured, forced to watch small animals killed during satanic ceremonies. School officials in many cities report high school students are forming satanic groups. A Chicago policeman told us satanic crime makes gang activity look like a nursery school. During this program, you will see the many sides of Satanism. You'll be shocked, and you may be tempted to turn away in denial of such unspeakable horror. If you think I'm exaggerating, watch closely. Listen to what is being done in the name of Satan.
The first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive. Thank you for everything.
Bad things happened on the second one. Namely, the election was rigged. And we found out, and you see that happening.
But and you are the greatest. God bless you. I miss you.
Perseverance for any amount of time, I would start seeing the change in my life. Staying clean and sober, but I just get so the overwhelming of the emotions when I come into early recovery is too much for me to handle. It's like trials, I'm angry, I have a hard time communicating, I get frustrated, I don't feel like I'm isolated.
The night around us has indeed grown dark. The old evil is once again rearing its head. There can be no place for the poison of anti-Semitism, especially in Europe. Because freedom of worship, freedom of speech, freedom from fear, these are fundamental to our European Union.
Because, free speech is a pure bullshit if nobody knows how you are guided through this so-called free speech. Especially when it's to be guided from one hated speech to another hated speech. I just want to have a transparent road through these different speeches, and I want, by the way, to have a sort of public order. I want to avoid racist speech and hate speech.
Jewish history is European history. Jewish culture is European culture. And Jewish life must be able to flourish for Europe to flourish fully. This is something which is enshrined in our European Union.
I just keep going harder and harder with these intros. This is Deez Nuts Podcast. Episode 11. Should I do an episode in Batman voice, like all the episodes? Hit me up in the comment section below. This influencer stuff is such monkey business. Anyway, the intro spoke for itself. I don't need to say anything. Know what I'm saying? You can read yourself. But I've recently remembered how to animate pictures in my editing software, so expect from now on that pictures actually move on the screen. I'm remembering, alright? Anyway. So I want to start off episode 11 by addressing the elephant in the room. The elephant that nobody sees. So this year is a very special year. I think I already mentioned that in the previous episodes. We got Saturn in Aries. It's already live. We got the fire year, the fire horse year. It's already live also. We got a bunch of stuff. Okay? Why is this year special? Well, it's special because there is a prophecy that's not mine, that's very, very important to me, because I'm a Leo. Okay? Basically, the Sphinx will align with the star Regulus, and star Regulus is from the constellation Leo. We already know the Sphinx in Egypt. I'm not sure that the world knows that Romania also has a Sphinx. You should know that. Here is how it looks. It might be important this year, or it might not. Honestly, it can really go either way. I've seen both scenarios. I've seen both worlds. I feel like I'm constantly shifting between each one, but this is for another episode. I don't want to get into that rabbit hole now. The point is, and it's kind of an important point, this year will decide the fate of humanity as a whole. And once again, I have to reiterate, because I really want to stress this, it can really go either way. So how you observe the world and how you carry on with the world from this year until, I don't know, I'm not going to give you a target, but this year at least. Okay, let's just say this year at least. It's going to affect everything. It's not, this year is not a year like humanity has ever seen. We have never had the astrological positions that we have. This summer we're gonna have a prison portal, which I had some notes, but I can't fucking find them now. So I'm gonna talk about that in another time when I remember. But this year is major, guys. It's huge. It's incredible. And I want to get ahead of a subject. And that subject is occult knowledge. So there have been a lot of factions, right? If you have seen the previous podcast episode, you know about the fourth factions, but those were not mine. That was just from that guy's video, and while I agree with it, it's not complete, you know. The important part is that there are multiple factions and that the old world order is currently falling. It's literally in free fall. It's demolishing. This is the Great Reset, because Saturn starts in Aries, and in Aries the whole zodiac starts. And it's at 0 degrees, so it's literally the start of the start. Okay? It's pretty big, guys. It's pretty huge. This is the Great Reset. What does that mean for us? I mean, it means you can reclaim your sovereignty, and you can remember who you are, and you can step into your power. Or it means you will owe nothing and be happy. Either way, this is something is gonna give this year. I really hope it's not gonna be the latter, because I don't want a digital ID, but this body of work has the what do you call it? This body of work has the purpose of empowerment and open sourcing truth. Even if truth is uncomfortable, truth has hurt in it, if you write it. It literally has hurt in it, okay? So, yeah. It is not pretty, but at the same time, would you rather have comforting lies? Would you rather just ignore the fact that they eat children? Should we just, move forwards? That's a slang that you people love. Anyway, this year is huge, okay? And I want to get ahead of one simple fact. The occult knowledge. A lot of people would come out of the woodworks and just reveal stuff. Revealed occult stuff. Because the prophecy this year is that when the Sphinx aligns with Star Regulus, humanity will gain a new knowledge as per Chris Bledsoe. That's his name. This is the guy whose prophecy is. And he said that someone called the lady showed that to him. I don't know. Anyway, humanity will gain a new knowledge, and possibly Christ appears. Christ returns. Obviously, I would not know anything about that. By the way, I do have a huge nose, in case you're wondering. I have a huge nose, so you should definitely listen to me. Because I know what I'm talking about here. Anyway, so we have this prophecy. And it's big. It's big. The new knowledge. I mean, the year already started with the Epstein files. Now, UFO disclosure, it might be the next, but it also might be a blue beam stuff. But anyway, I want to get ahead of them revealing the occult knowledge. They have been gatekeeping this knowledge for so long. I mean, if you think that the people in power are not using this for their own benefits, because they are not working for money, they make the money. You work for them. Like, they actually convinced the population. Hear me out on this one, because this is the doozy. They actually convinced the population to give out the gold and the silver and the copper in favor of plastic. It used to be paper. It used to be a tree. It used to be some vibration that was actually a plant, but no, now it's plastic. It's fully synthetic, just like the people nowadays. Anyway. I don't give a fuck anymore. It's just, we're at the end game here, okay? We're at the end game. What the fuck? Wake the fuck up, people. Like, seriously. It's just not cutting corners anymore. It is how it is. So, for the 15th time in this intro, I just want to get of them revealing the occult secrets, but know that they are the ones who perpetuated it. They simply change their covers. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, okay? It's just that simple, guys. It's literally that simple. Once again, the schizo is the natural predator of the psycho. I see their stuff, and I actually have the intelligence and the mental capacity and the stupidity to put myself into this and actually reveal their plans. And surprisingly, I do have some help from above, which kind of translates into me getting a very, very head start in the prophetic sense, because I tune in and I see what they're doing, and sometimes I actually manage to communicate it in a nice little riddle, a nice little mystery. Because the Christ is the living mystery, right? Emphasis on the living here, okay? Big emphasis on that. And once again, I'm gonna use two sources in this material, in this podcast. Two separate podcasts. One is from the Y-Files guy, which I really like, really enjoy. Subscribe to him. I mean, you probably subscribed already, if you're into conspiracies and all that. He has great breakdowns and all that. I mean, big respect for the guy. And he has a new format, a podcast, a long form content format, with a Templar, the Chief Templar. I don't know his rank anyway, but I found out that his information matches with my year-long research, and this is the reason I do include it. But again, I want to mention a very, very important fact. And I want to mention also a disclaimer, a personal disclaimer. He may not know that the people whom he works for have different agendas and different plans, because they themselves may not know that they are getting played in a very, very huge game of chess, of dimensional chess, might I add. So I want to extend the benefit of the doubt here, okay? I'm not going to call ill intent just yet. I will acknowledge, and this is also the fact that why I chose the material, I will acknowledge that the information seems to be good. It seems to be authentic. It rings fine. But there are some spots in which there is a hidden agenda presented. And across the episode, I will call it out. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy episode 11. This is gonna be probably the longest one, but probably the most knowledge and wisdom packed. So you might wanna save this. You might wanna like it, bookmark it, whatever. And you might wanna listen to it again just to, be sure you caught everything. Because it's a lot. I mean, just that one podcast, it's huge with information. And I found out another one, a guy which I really like, I really enjoy, Matthias Di Stefano. And again, his information is it's great, absolutely great. I like it. I really like it. So, once again, please sit back and enjoy it.
And farmers and blacksmiths and masons.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't just knights on horseback. It was and clerics. It was the first multinational corporation, really.
Sure.
And it had men and women involved in it in different capacities. But and so even after the suppression, as the Templar Order continued to exist secretly underground, there's some very high-level people like Queen Elizabeth I that were involved in it. Francis Bacon had also been involved in it. So when he wrote his New Atlantis, the whole basis of the book was that there was this secret underground Templar body that referred to itself as the College of Solomon.
Yes.
So the head of the College of Solomon's wearing a turban with a red Templar cross on it. And they have developed all these technologies, or they're trying to develop all these technologies. And the story goes that there was this ship. It's kind of like the story of Lost, actually, if you ever watched that TV show.
The first season.
Yeah, so there's this ship that crashes on the island, and nobody knows about this island. It's like this hidden island. And when the people get off the ship, they find there's this civilization on this island, and they're totally spiritually and materially way more advanced than the rest of the world. And the people of the island explain to themselves, well, we're the College of Solomon. We develop these technologies, and we know about the whole world, but the whole world doesn't know about us. And they say to them, well, where'd you learn of these technologies? And they said, well, it's like this. We settled on this island, and then one day we saw this light out hovering over the ocean, and it was like in the shape of a cross. So we rowed our boats out to it, and there was like this force field that wouldn't let us get any closer to it. And then it spit this book out to us.
Okay.
And so we brought this book back to land, and it was a blueprint for how to create all these technologies. So we've been just trying to develop them ever since. So this is like clearly describing this UFO event,
Sure.
right? But all the technologies were believed to be technologies from the original Atlantis. And it described things like submarines and flying machines and things that, didn't exist back in Francis Bacon's day, but it was believed these were the things that the original Atlantis had, and that it was the Templar mission to redevelop these things, and to reestablish a country where they could be developed. And that's really what led to the creation of the United States, to become this new Atlantis where these technologies could be developed.
How does Francis Bacon's story track with Plato's description of Atlantis?
It's different because he's clearly sourcing back to Plato.
Sure.
But then he's also talking about all kinds of things that Plato doesn't talk about. And he talks about like medicines that need to be developed, and along with the technologies. And he just says it needs to be reestablished. The new Atlantis needs to be established.
And does that become a Templar mission?
And that becomes the Templar mission.
Okay.
Yeah. And then ultimately, the United States, well, originally the Royal Society was established in England to try to create these ideas of Francis Bacon, and then that was brought over into the establishment of the United States, which then became the main New Atlantis model to develop these things and perpetuate them.
So when the Templars they end up in Jerusalem, they're, I believe, granted permission to set up their headquarters.
Correct.
Under the dome.
Right. So this is the secret history.
Yes.
So like,
but this is why we're here. This is why.
Right. So while they're supposed to be protecting pilgrims,
right,
what they're really doing is they're digging, right, and they're doing archaeological excavation under the Temple Mount, and they're going into East Jerusalem, and they're opening up tombs and finding artifacts, and they're bringing this stuff secretly back to Europe. And then they're also going into places like Egypt, where they set up their grand commandery at the Temple of Isis at Philae.
Mm-hmm.
And from there they're going into places like the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, and Hatshepsut's temple, in the Valley of the Kings, and in Karnak, and they leave these Templar markers at all these places, and they leave Templar graffiti at all these places as well. And they're finding artifacts, including arks, like the Ark of the Covenant.
You said arks.
Arks,
so
plural.
Plural arks.
Yeah, so they found 6 arks, but there was probably 100 arks in antiquity. Every temple in Egypt had one of these arks, and you can see it on the temple walls when you know what to look for.
So if there were 100 arks on Earth, then how the arks are described in the Bible is incorrect?
Well, they were electrostatic capacitors, and they would be set up at certain node points around the planet, and then the electricity would build up, and it would just broadcast within the region.
That's one of the reasons also why these ancient civilizations used to be around the 33 latitude and not northern, because they connected to the magnetical field that was created under the glaciation, under the ice. And so in between the tropics, 33 south and north, so around those areas, all the energy was flowing faster which enables the people to connect more. To connect more with the constellations, to connect more with the movement of our planet, and because the north and the south were frozen, so all information and the sleeping mode of the planet was activated, and that generates a lot of information and energy in the center, in the tropical region.
And let me set up for those listening. If you take acacia wood and put gold on either side of it, you create a dielectric,
Correct.
which does transfer electricity.
That's exactly right. And then the other thing they put in the arcs was this, what was referred to as mana, which was really just gold converted into a monoatomic state, and what makes it superconductive. So you put this superconductive substance inside this, and it's going to produce a tremendous amount of electricity.
But monoatomic gold can only do that with some alchemical...
Correct.
Right, because scientists can't do this.
Correct.
But somebody could.
Yes. So the process, the Templars figured out how to do this, right? And it is weird science, because when you take gold and you convert it into this state, the first thing that happens is the gold, you break it down, and then, but you still have gold. But at a certain point, the gold just disappears.
You know what's crazy? In episode 7 of the Deez Nuts podcast, the one with the timeline mechanics, I literally explained this concept. I don't know the exact chemistry or physics behind it, because I was not really interested in school. And when the teachers explain to you, like when you go to, grade school, high school, whatever, college, I guess, they just give you the numbers. Like, they don't have a story behind them, so that people with emotional intelligence, which is the majority of you, I would say. It's actually the majority of people, because there are a lot of types of intelligences, and emotional intelligence, like the water element, because the water represents this feeling, this intelligence, this intuitive energy. It doesn't really explain. Like, it doesn't do the science enough justice to have it easily visualized or easily understandable with a nice myth, a nice story, a nice, piece of art, something that's already beautiful enough to make you enticed, so that you keep chasing the meaning and unravel the secrets and the mysteries behind it. Nobody's gonna do that with a fucking notebook, with a fucking chemistry notebook written from the fucking communist times, because my country is actually relatively fresh out of communism. It only fell in 89, in another snake year, and last year was a snake year. It's something with that. And also, if you are Romanian, here's a nice fractal. 2025, year of the snake. 1989, year of the snake. 1977, the year when Romania had the largest earthquake in recent memory. The one with the, 8 scale, or maybe 7. Year of the snake again. There's something with the snake here. And the enemy of the snake, or the opposite polarity of the energy of the snake, is the pig. And we entered in the European Union in a pig year. Yeah. Elon Musk is also a pig. Anyway. Coming back to all this. The science, the school doesn't do enough justice to the science. So about the timeline mechanics, I literally talked about this in the episode 7, and how it actually functions is that you have to look at the atomic level. Okay, let's start with the building blocks of reality, the atom. You may have in your mind's eye, again, if you don't have fluoride in your toothpaste, you may have in your mind's eye, when I'm talking to you about an atom, that thing, that red ball with 3 circles. That's kind of right, but also incredibly wrong. Because, yes, there is a nucleus in the middle, and there are 3 protons, electrons, I don't know. There are 3 spinny thingies. And the fact is that they're not circular. Like, the spinny thingies don't have a trajectory that is a perfect circle, because that's very, no. It's not like that. The position of the electrons actually depends on when the observer observes it. This is the foundational block of quantum physics, this experiment with the double slit experiment, you know. And this is also Heisenberg's uncertainty. Anyway, so when the observer observes the atom, the position of the 3 electrons, they each embody a cloud of probability in which they could be anywhere. Anywhere. You know? Anywhere. Near the nucleus, anyway. Because 99.97, I think, the number is not important, but it's 99.99%. It's the vast majority of an atom is literally empty space. This is why I say the consciousness is dark matter, because it's literally empty space. It's unconscious and subconscious. It's a lot. You know, it's a lot. And, yeah. The observer observes the atom, and this act of observation, coming with the personal twist of the observer, literally defines where the electrons are positioned. So, the atom exists in a state, like Schrödinger's cat, in which it could be, like Schrödinger's cat, either dead or alive, but when the observer observes it, aka when you open the box with a cat, you find out if the cat is alive with the bomb or if the cat is dead with the bomb. So basically all the probabilities, while they are possible, one of them collapses and one of them becomes real in your local reality. So basically you observe your own reality, you create your own reality, and you really have a tremendous power in the act of observing itself. This is why meditation and, you know, consciousness, mindfulness, whatever, this is why all that is very important. Because you kind of have a small creator role. Kinda. But really you do. And I understand that's a lot of responsibility, and I understand that the majority of people would rather distract themselves, but let's just get back to this segment, because this episode is everything.
Well, the lattice structure of the molecules falls away, and you're left with single atoms.
Well, even before that, it literally disappears into a higher dimension.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when you create the conditions for it to come back, yeah, it enters in this monatomic state where every grain of this gold is 1 atom thick. That is the 2 electrons in the outer valence ring both enter into what's called a spin forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, it enters into a high spin state. So the nucleus completely captures the outer valence ring, so it doesn't bind with anything else.
Right.
And when it does this, it generates a tremendous amount of electricity, and it becomes superconductive.
And there are some parts of the Anunnaki legend that say they were here from monoatomic gold.
Right. Yeah, they were mining gold.
Mm-hmm.
See that bowl? Do you see that bowl right there? Oh yeah. Look at that. Wow, dude. This is just absolutely wild.
Okay, so now on the left-hand side is Osiris.
Tell me that doesn't look like a reptilian.
So look at
Dude, that's an Anunnaki.
Yeah. Right. So
that's Anunnaki.
That's Enlil and Enki, the Anunnaki, and that's Osiris, and Isis is behind him. Those wings are the wings of Isis, and Osiris are fighting the Anunnaki.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, the Anunnaki on either side.
Yes.
This is in the Boston Public Library. Library.
You get the wing disc right there.
Yeah, the wing disc.
I think this is when we see modern UAPs in the ocean. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're because this gold it can also be made deep in the earth and pushed up volcanically, and then it gets deposited in the soil and or in the bottom of the ocean. If you look at the bottom of the ocean, it's mostly just white powder down there, which is what this monoatomic gold is. But it can be pushed up volcanically, and then plants absorb it. And so the other way you can capture it is you could calcinate down like a bush, right? Burn it down, and you can extract the monoatomic gold out of the ashes.
And that's interesting because calcinate, that would be one of the steps of alchemy.
Correct. And
Okay.
it's also, we believe, from a Templar perspective, it's why Moses witnessed God as a burning bush, right? Because you have to calcinate down the bush to extract the mana literally out of the ashes, the monoatomic gold.
Do you remember the name of that bush, the scientific name? Because they're all over Egypt.
Oh yes, it's the tamarisk. Well, there's the tamarisk, and then there's the acacia, but they're all over the area. But there's tamarisk, the thorny tamarisk is.
So I've talked about this before, but what's interesting about the tamarisk, I also knew of acacia, whatever you want to fucking call it. But both of these plants that grow natively in the region of Egypt actually contain DMT, which, just like Terence McKenna said, the body also contains. It doesn't even contain. It actually makes its own DMT, but in very trace amounts, so it's negligible. But this begs the question: why is the pathway there? Just a question. Why?
What they say was probably the burning bush.
Right. And so there are these perennials, this is for the audience all over Egypt, that these perennials have highly volatile oils that are flammable.
Correct.
When the conditions are correct in the desert, they catch fire.
That's exactly right. And if you extract the ashes from that, you can extract this monatomic gold from those ashes. This is also, by the way, we believe why later on the Hebrew priests at like Solomon's temple were demanding all these burnt sacrifices. Because again, you can extract the monoatomics, the mana, quote unquote. And mana, by the way, mana just in Hebrew means what is it? It's literally what it means is what is it? And it's called that because if you do a spectroscopic analysis or a chemical testing with this monoatomics, it doesn't show up as anything.
Right.
So it's like, mana, what is it? So
take us back to the ark. The mana is in there.
So it's placed in the ark. Even the Bible says that there was a pot of mana placed in the ark. But if you
mana provided throughout the entire Exodus.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Moses, he also burned the golden calf into this white powder, and for centuries, scientists said, "Oh, see, this is just proof that the Bible's, ridiculous because everyone knows gold melts; it doesn't turn into a powder." But actually, if you do this alchemical process to it, it does turn into a powder, and it does not only. You can see this. In ancient Egypt, on all the temples, wherever you see an ark, you'll also see the pharaoh with his hand out with this mound-shaped cone on his hand. That cone mound is the mana. It's the mana bread.
Yeah, and nowadays you see Zelensky with the fucking coke mound. So, we really came a long way as humanity. Bravo to us. I want to mention something. About this little detail with the mana and the pot and with the urn and whatever. So there is this little book. It's called Viitor cu cap de mort, or Future with a Skull in Romanian. It was released in 2001, I think, or 2003. It was released a while ago. But it literally describes. We have a range of mountains in Romania called the Bucești Mountains. And it literally describes that there has been something discovered in these mountains, and they started to dig, and they brought on some of their their top technology, like the plasma melter, where in traditional technology you usually use TNT or other primitive explosives so that you clear away in the mines, and then you mine out the stone, you quarry out the stone and you make a quarry, and then you mine the mine shaft. They brought up the plasma digger, which literally makes stone into plasma, like it melts stone. You don't have to quarry anything, so you can basically dig in stealth mode with no problem. They brought that, they dug into the mountain, and they found a force field. Just like this guy's first story with the island and the force field and the cross and whatever. So they found this force field and they found this chamber, and this chamber has basically is connected with the tunnels to Egypt, to Saqqara, to that whole area, which I'm sure it's probably not to the Giza plateau, but it's probably connected to the Saqqara region, to the Rostau, because Romania, again, there is that connection in the numerology alone. So they brought the plasma cannon, they started to dig, they found out these tunnels, and they also found out a holographic hole. And this holographic hole also had an energy shield, which energy shield literally... I'm spoiling a bit, but this energy shield can only be accessed by some people, not all of them. If you work in the army, if you work in the secret services, you probably... you can't. You'll probably die. This is a connection to the question of who is the one, or what is the process in which the priests of humanity get anointed or get chosen. Nowadays, they go to university and they get their degrees by parasites, so that's not a real anointing. In any case, this is just a spoiler and we will talk about that later. But going back to Future with a Skull or Viitor cu Cap de Mort, they find out this holographic hole, which literally has the history of our species. The gene editing, the different biomes, the whatever. And according to this book, which is a very, very schizo book, it's and it was released back then when the people were not ready for this. Like, it was literally frowned upon to talk about such things. I literally just discovered it years ago, and it was there for decades. In any case, and they discovered this holographic hole of records, and they also say this little detail, which at the time when I discovered the book, I think in 2023 or something like that, at the first time, I thought it was so crazy and so random. But they literally say that they discovered in this Hall of Records an urn with this monoatomic gold, and the Freemasons or whatever, the Illuminati, whatever, the battalion families, the old families, the old bloodlines, they all knew about this, and they came, and this is what they were interested in, because like the pharaohs, they just wanted to snort that powder. They literally just wanted to snort that. They were not interested in anything else. But this was the reason that supposedly, again, this book is sold as a science fiction novel, because it kind of has to. You can't really say that, oh, disclosure, and claim to be taken seriously when you make such insane claims. But once again, life was magical and now it's not. Anyway, this book was released a long time ago. It talked about this. I thought it was weird, but ever since then, all the details are just confirming it. And this urn with the white dust, it literally named it monoatomic gold. It literally talked about it before I found this podcast, before these Templar guys started to talk about any of this stuff before 2026, because this is the huge year for humanity and the whole collective. So, again, according to this book, this is the reason why Romania was rushed into NATO. Think about it. I pretty much think it's confirmed right about now, but this year is gonna be interesting. Anyway, coming back to the episode.
And when you form the mana in the vessel, when the gold, it phase shifts into this other dimension, and when you bring it back in the vessel, it forms that exact mound shape. And so that's why they're depicting it that way. But the pharaoh would eat that, and it had incredible health benefits, in terms of curing cancer and everything else. But it was also put inside those arcs, and it would produce this tremendous amount of power. And I'm certain, actually, that's why these phase shifting UFOs, these UAPs that are phase shifting the same way that the gold does, when you do this alchemical process to it, that's what they're doing. They're mining this stuff, because it allows them to use. And by the way, the Hebrew tradition referred to this substance as mana, right? But and it was said to, if you read texts like the Kebra Nagas, which is the Ethiopian text, that talks about King Solomon's flying craft.
And Menelik, yes.
Right. And Menelik. King Solomon's flying craft was said to be powered by this mana, right?
But wait, there's more.
In the ancient Vedic texts, they talk about flying craft, and they're referred to as Vimana. In the Sumerian text, they talk about the Anunnaki, these gods, having flying craft, and the flying craft are referred to as Shimana. And the Polynesian cultures that talk about like how the Eastern Island statues were moved, it was with a substance that was referred to as mana, right? In like Tibetan traditions, the white stone of enlightenment was referred to as mani. It's all the same stuff, and you find it universal. And the other unique thing that happens with this mana, when you subject it to a weak electrostatic or electromagnetic field, it causes the vessel containing it to start to weigh less than nothing. This is really how a couple people with rods could carry the Ark of the Covenant, which would have weighed several tons. With all that gold and acacia wood.
And maybe it's a coincidence or maybe not, but the priests that carried the ark were the Levites.
Right.
And it sounds a lot like levitation.
Levitation.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Not that the word levitation is a Hebrew word, but I mean, you tell me where the word levitation
it's
comes
just
from.
interesting.
There's a lot of root words to things that we normally don't think of as with certain cultures. For example, the word ignite, right, comes from ignis, right? The Greek ignis, which meant fire. You know where that comes from?
No.
It comes from the Sanskrit agni, which meant fire.
Okay.
So agni became igni, where we get ignite. But like most people would never, so they take it back to the Greek, but they wouldn't realize it actually comes from the Sanskrit.
Sure.
So there's words all the time that get incorporated into words we use in English. Or the word on, for example, when you turn on a light switch, on was the ancient Egyptian word for light. So you're literally turning on the light, and there's lots of words like that we've inherited that we don't really remember the origins of, and scholars are quick to point them back to the Roman or the Latin or the Greek, but the Greeks and the Romans, they got those from other cultures.
Sure.
Too. So I mean, it's
Yeah, you can see a lot of Polynesian cultures have words with Greek roots, but there's an argument to be made that it's kind of the other way around.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%.
In all honesty and accuracy, this is why I love etymology so much. So, I think that in the past, we used to be all telepathic. And this guy is going to explain exactly how that worked, exactly in Atlantis. But telepathy means, well, it implies that you have to have an unspoken trust. You get it? Telepathy, unspoken. You have to have an unspoken trust so that what is projected into your mind, you take it as valid and as good. So that would actually mean no lies. And you try to organize a society, a global society, with that type of mentality. You can't. We probably could have. We probably did. But nowadays, in the short season, I mean, come on. So this is where writing comes from. Because you have to have something in writing. You know, that's literally how you say it. Give me something in writing. Something certain. Sign here. A contract. You know? And while this is useful in some cases, this has also been proven to be massively, incredibly detrimental to humanity as a whole. Just writing. We have Thoth as the god of writing and magic, you know? And I'm gonna tell you right now, there has been some grave abuse of this. There has been some usefulness, but I mean, with the Epstein material right now, and with the whole silence of the world right now, it is kind of mind-boggling. Anyway, this is why I like etymology so much. Because while we do have language, and we do have words, and we do have, you know, speaking, not telepathy, not dreaming, and not the spirit technology we once had. I think we still have, but we have to remember it. Anyway, when you have writing, you can actually trace back the origins of certain words, because etymology as a science, as a whole field, it's kind of like the memory that tracks each iteration of whatever was used by the collective across time. So when a word is used sparingly over a few years, it is going to inevitably fade away. But when a word, or when a shortening of a word is so used by everybody, that literally means, factually, that everyone voted with their life, with their time, with their actions, and with their mind and spirit and whatever, that that word is good. They literally judged it as worthy to be maintained and reciprocated and repeated over and over again. And the sum collective of processes in each words collectively makes up a language. So this is etymology, okay? I literally over-explained to you etymology. But this is why I like it, because you can actually go back and see those little details where the mentality of the humans evolved and judged that something is nice. It's nice enough to keep, you know, because you only keep what you like. So, etymology is very important and very powerful. Just like I keep telling you in this podcast about government, govern and ment. You know, I actually missed on the small detail that to govern means, from the old Greek, to navigate, as in a over water, in a, you know, maritime context. As in steer the ship and control the ship, navigate. Which is, I like it better than the mind control one. Granted, we are where we are, but I am trying to remain hopeful and, as I told you, the observer observes reality. Every possible outcome is possible. Let's get back to this episode, shall we?
You have to understand the history associated with the pharaoh Akhenaten.
Mm-hmm.
So Akhenaten was the first pharaoh to proclaim monotheism in history. He said all the gods of Egypt were actually a part of one god that was known as the Aten, or my Aten, which in ancient Egyptian was Atenai, right? When Akhenaten got deposed, because the Amun priesthood rose up and were like, hey, we're not going to do this one god thing anymore.
Right, because they worshiped Amun and the others.
Right. So they had to go underground.
Mm-hmm.
Akhenaten had a brother whose name was Tutmosis. And when Akhenaten was deposed, Tutmosis is the one that took all the Atenist followers out of Egypt. And he took them up into Phoenicia. And they really literally became the Canaanites and became the early Hebrews. And so, in words like Atenai became Adonai, which meant Lord in Hebrew. But the ark that's associated with the Hebrew tradition really was one of these arks that was in Egypt that was was used to generate power. And we believe these arks, according to the ancient Egyptian account, these were technologies that had come from Utlant,
right,
which was their name for what we now call Atlantis, and it's depicted on the at Edfu at the Temple of Horus.
Yep.
There's what's called the building texts that are on the wall there, and they show the gods, the Needers, coming over in boats. Mm-hmm. From the primordial mound that had drowned in the ocean as they came to Egypt to settle. And they also showed these arks on the boats being brought over. So anytime you see an ark in Egypt, one of these arks, it's always depicted on a boat. And it's because it was technology that was brought over from Utlant.
Sure.
And deposited in these temples that were then used as like power stations.
I mean, there's even that story in the Bible about Uzzah who goes to study the ark and is electrocuted.
Right, literally he kills him on the spot, because he's shocked to death. Yeah. So and that was the other thing. So the pharaohs are always depicted with these rods next to the ark because they were grounding rods.
Yes. So
you could literally put the rod in the ground, drop it against the ark, and it would ground the electricity. So then you could open it. And in the Torah or the Old Testament, these were it was Aaron's rod.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Aaron's rod was used for. Same thing. It was a grounding rod. You put it in the ground, drop it against the ark, discharge the electricity, so then you could handle the ark. But if you didn't do that, the ark would start to build up static electricity over several hours or several days, and then it would discharge through the winged figures on the top.
The cherubim, yeah.
The cherubim. Mm-hmm. And if you remember in the story, Moses, he sets up a tabernacle in the wilderness, which he did with wool curtains.
Right.
Right? And wool is also a static generator.
That's right.
So it would help to build up that static, that would then be collected in the ark as a capacitor, which would then discharge it.
That's true. When they would send priests into the tabernacle, they would tie a rope around their
Correct.
legs.
Yeah, because if they got killed, they could pull them out. Yeah, so they wouldn't get electrocuted too. Yeah, so it's so the Templar Order, they found 6 of these arks.
Where did they find these?
In between Jerusalem and Egypt.
Okay,
and most of them were found in Egypt. In fact, at the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, there's a secret chamber. It's called the Seti room now, but it's a chamber. It's closed to the public. We lead tours in Egypt, and we have access to this chamber, And what it has depicted on the temple wall is it shows Seti the First holding the manna bread in his hand next to an ark, and then it shows another ark on the boat undergoing transportation. And then, but the ark right next to him, there's also 3 red Templar crosses that were painted by the order back in the late 1100s. That's where they found the first ark, was in that room. And that's one of the arks that they secured that we still have to this day.
Regarding that wool comment, you can actually go back to the intro and notice that the rabbi is wearing a huge woolen hat. I mean, there is probably a reason why they chose these real materials and not polyester, because polyester is plastic, is another type of plastic. Everything is plastic in this matrix of mind, matrix of plastic. You know, matrix actually means womb, matrix mother womb. That's because it's all around us, it's all encompassing us. What a clown womb. I mean, even the writers, the producers, whatever, of the movie, even they are LGBTQ now. It's spreading. Crazy. Anyway, I'm not judging, but you have parasites. Just laying it out for you. Sorry. They control the spread. They want to spread through that. It's like they also think they have a conscience. Parasites are literally, as above so below, the avatars of some really nasty creatures in the astral. So they have to have some sort of, you know, characters in this game, in the material game. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. But fortunately, we have me to tell you all about it in a very candid fashion, and you should actually know what to defend against. You know what's a great defense against that in the astral? Dancing. No, I'm not kidding. Get up and dance. If you ever feel sad, depressed, just put on some nice music, get up and dance. You'll see, something will happen, because energetically, it kind of works like the Tai Chi. You move your electromagnetic field, you move your body, you shake your bones, you literally shake it off. For better or worse, you literally shake it off. Okay? Just, I don't know why I'm talking about this, but this is Deez's podcast. It's my podcast. I can do however many rants and I can go on however many tangents I want. It's my own damn podcast. Damn, I love this. So anyway, about the wool and about electricity, there is an interesting study. You can actually look it up yourself on the frequency of materials. And basically linen and wool both have the highest frequency, but you can't actually wear both of these together. There's actually a passage in the Bible about this, which is crazy. But you can't wear these together, these two materials together, because like a plus minus pole, they cancel each other out. You can only wear one. And let me tell you, I got some shirts a couple of years ago. I never used to wear shirts, but I lost some weight. You know, they fit better. It was natural. And I got some shirts, and they were made from linen. I had no idea why, but I was feeling so good in them, like in the material. And I also discovered something crazy. I do trash fiat, absolutely, but props where props are due. It has the benefit of anonymity. And say what you will about US dollars, they are overprinted as fuck, but they do have the tokenomics of a shitcoin. But at least they are part linen. They are made with a special mix of cotton and linen. This is why dollars feel so good in the hand. It's because of the linen. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And anyway, going back to this study with the materials of the clothes of the whatever, what the woman scientist discovered was that the lowest material is polyester. First and foremost, this should be probably obvious, but what struck me was that a normal human, a healthy human, vibrates at like 75 or something. I don't know if it's hertz or she doesn't really. The article that I read doesn't really reference a point of measurement, so I just take it at face value and I just tell you how I felt. Anyway, a normal human vibes at 75. A nearly dying human or a dead body, I don't really remember. I think an old or almost dead body vibrates at like 10, and polyester is the same vibration. So that's kind of crazy. And about wool, organic wool vibrates at 100. Non-organic wool vibrates at like 75, which is baseline. And the real materials, it only goes up from that. Linen is like 2000 and wool is like also 2000 or maybe 5000, both of them. But if you live with something about this, you should know that linen is nice. Linen is fucking awesome, to tell you the truth. Real linen, not fake one. Okay,
right,
coming
so
back to the arcs.
The Hebrews had the arcs. They probably didn't know what they were.
You're correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't understand. Well, they had a arc.
Right.
For sure. And they quickly learned that it could be deadly.
Sure.
And it would probably, it would build up this power. Interestingly, if you look at around the world, and you'll see this all over Egypt, but also other places like Cambodia and in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
There's these what are known as, they're called butterfly clamps, which fit these stones together, and then there's these clamps, and it's the same looking clamp. Those weren't actually, we believe, weren't really to hold the stones together, because if you wanted to hold the stones together, it would be thicker in the center and smaller on the sides. But in these cases, it's thicker on the sides and thinner in the center. So the purpose of them wasn't, and it was metal. We know it was metal that was put in there. The purpose wasn't really to hold the stones together. They created a zipper effect around the temples, and they were like the receiving for these arcs. So as the energy was broadcasted, it'd be picked up by this metal zipper that would go around the temples, and then they could just kind of plug into that, We think that's what they were really used for.
And you think there was about 100 of them?
Oh yeah, at least.
Around the world?
Yeah, maybe even more. You find, even to this day in Japan and the Shinto tradition, they have these arcs that they bring out of their temples, once a year, and they'll parade them around the town, and they look exactly like the Ark of the Covenant.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but it comes from the early Japanese tradition, of having these arcs, So it was an international thing that I think went back to this technology of Atlantis that, when that civilization collapsed, there's certain ones that were preserved, and then later they made kind of like symbolic replicas of them. You see this a lot in Ethiopia,
yes,
even to this day. They call them tablet boxes, but they.
So do you believe that the ark that's allegedly in Axum in Ethiopia?
I think it's real.
You think it's real?
Yeah, I think it's one of the real ones.
Okay.
I have no reason to doubt it. Actually, I mean the that whole Ethiopian tradition there is very old.
The Kevin Nagast talks about the
Yep.
ark coming there.
Correct. Yeah, and it also there's one of the earliest Jewish temples in Egypt was actually on Elephantine Island,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been into the ruins of it's that area is closed to the public, but I've been in there.
How do you get access to all these places? By the way, Tim does tours.
Yeah.
That I am definitely going to take. How do you get access to these places?
Well, because the order's been there for the last 1,000 years doing research, and
Right.
so they just give us access, because we've always been respectful. They allow us to do our initiation ceremonies in the Great Pyramid. Still, it's not a problem.
Does the Great Pyramid have anything to do with the arcs?
Some believe that the so-called sarcophagus, the box that's in the king's chamber, was originally designed to hold an ark.
It would fit better than a body.
Right. Others believe there is something else that's going on in Egypt. At all these temples where you find these arks, there's also talks of stargates that are this is in the hieroglyphs on the temple walls. They talk about stargates, and that these arcs were being used to provide the energy for these stargates, and that the pharaoh would go through these stargates and meet with the needers, the gods, who would instruct him, and then he would come back and pass that on to the rest of Egypt. And there were only like 7 pharaohs that were considered masters of the stargates, and Hatshepsut was one, and then her son Tutmosis III was one. Even Akhenaten, who was the great grandson of Tutmosis III, was also listed as a master of the Stargate.
Okay, so let me get this straight. The Iraq War was basically an excuse to go, for the Americans, to go there and secure the Stargate that activated. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. They probably found Gilgamesh too, the tomb. Oh, my boiler just started. That's a nice little synchronicity right there. It's probably true, alright? Anyway, man, my life feels like a video game lately. So, you mean to tell me there's only 7 pharaohs that actually mastered themselves enough to handle the Stargates? This is, I'm not gonna go into any trope here. I do want to tell you about a little synchronicity I have with just numbers that have been coded me, or I have coded them. I'm not sure. As within, so without, I guess. But so there's this rabbit hole I'm going into. It has been my life's purpose. This is why I chose my name D, which is shortened for the dilemma. It's, I don't know. Literally. Just like mana. What is it? I don't know. What am I? I don't know. Who asks? But in all seriousness, I really don't know. So I sought to find out. And I've quickly noticed in my life, in my early life, that there were not many sources to put my faith into that were genuinely true. Like, they all had some sort of agenda. They all came with some sort of programming. In some sort of way, I was losing something. Which, why? Like, why does a creator need to create a world in which energy is not abundant? The easiest explanation is that it is, but the knowledge is gatekept, and the people are kept in the dark. and there is mind programming. This is just, it's game theory. I'm not even blaming anyone. If you felt blamed, that's on you, actually. I'm just talking about game theory. And purely hypothetical, of course. As an architect, I just curate the work of others. I'm not really responsible for anything myself. The wind just blew in my window. I like this. Anyway, so you mean to tell me that there are only 7 pharaohs, and that there are only 7 days, and that there are 7 colors of the rainbow, main colors, 7 chakras? I mean, 7 feels like a cycle, like the complete cycle, you know? And are we in a period of where we're about to experience the higher octave? I don't know how to pronounce that word. But after 7 comes 8. This is what I mean. And the coincidences I have is that I recently found out that John D, with whom I share the nickname, is born on the 13/7, which is what? July? I think July. Like me, he was an 8 life path. I'm also an 8 life path. In the series Dark, there is the material named Cesium-137. This 137 is also featured in Stranger Things, and it's some sort of something with nuclear something that helps with time travel. And supposedly you can only time travel in max 33 years intervals, and 137 is actually the 33rd prime number, which this coincidence is not. I'm pretty sure it's not a coincidence, and there is a deep pattern here, which I am actually unraveling as we speak. In any case, this is very interesting to me. Let's get back to the episode.
So, there's some evidence that this idea of the Aten, the one god that Akhenaten talked about, was actually known by the pharaohs going back to Tutmosis III at least, and that it was knowledge that was secret amongst the pharaohs, that all the gods were aspects of one god. And it was only Akhenaten who then made that idea public. And that was where his real heresy was.
Sure, I mean, he moved the capital right from Cairo.
Right. And he set up Tel Armana.
Yes.
And he, and then, of course, Nefertiti was his wife. The real kicker there is that there are busts of Nefertiti. Well, same... That headdress that Nefertiti is wearing is actually a Mayan headdress.
Mm.
And on Elephantine Island, there is a secret Tutmosis III temple there, and it shows Mayans trading beads with Egyptians.
Again, this is Anunnaki legend that after the Great Flood, the Yucatan survivors went and Egypt survivors went.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we think what happened was actually, so the Mayans, they referred to Aztlan, which was the homeland. The Egyptian temple walls talk about Utlant, which is the same place, and that we think what the Egyptians later did, so the Egyptians inherited all of this stuff, right? They didn't even know what most of it was.
They found it.
They found it. I mean, when they found the Serapeum, for example, where there was these giant granite boxes that weigh 700 tons and are so perfectly and precisely made The Egyptians couldn't have made that. They had copper tools.
Right, and those I've seen those right angles measured with lasers.
Right, and they're precise.
Yes.
No one knows really what the boxes were for. According to early accounts, the only thing that was found in them was a white powder. Right?
Right.
So it was probably this monoatomic gold. And it was probably a survivor bunker, to preserve this stuff from the Cataclysm. So when the Egyptians later found it, they were totally freaked out. We know they were because they started sacrificing bulls there. They started eating the dirt out of the temple walls because they thought it might have magical properties. I mean, these were not the technologically advanced people who made those boxes. These were the later people who found them, clearly, and were trying to process it. But we also know that the Egyptians wanted to find the original homeland of the Needers and of this tradition. And so they probably sailed in boats over to the Yucatan and met with the Mayans who had the same tradition, and we don't know how much they associated with them, but we do know, like in the Valley of the Queens, for example, there's a tomb dedicated to a Queen Maya, and there's Mayan artwork in the tomb, so there had to have been some crossbreeding going on, and it may be that Nefertiti herself was a Mayan princess. She was said to have come from a foreign land, and and that was Akhenaten's wife.
Right.
So, and then King Tutankhamun was their son.
Right.
And his original name was Tutankhaten, after the Atlantis. In fact, his throne says Tutankhaten on it, but he had to change it to Amun because the Amun priesthood took over at that point. So.
Actually, this is something that now I can understand better because of what hydrogen represents. Hydrogen is basically the sun. So when you connect with water, you're connecting with the light of the sun. So you are literally diving in the ocean of light. And the only thing is that is organized in a different way. That's something that I understand now. But in that time, it was all about the dreaming. It was all about the water that comes from the sky, comes from the same place that the light is coming from. So we connect with the same point of view, with the same vision. And that able a lot of the Atlantean culture to recognize that if you have the water inside, you have also the light inside. If you eat what the light is producing, what the soil is producing, you now have the product inside. You now have the power, the wisdom inside of you. You eat that animal, you have that information inside. You eat that plant, you have that information inside. So you just have to close your eyes to grasp all the information. And the starting of meditation, the starting of alchemy is basically the recognition that all those powers that we observe in the outside are in the within.
Do you remember when I told you that the English language is deeply, deeply coded? Well, H is the 8th letter. Hydrogen. That's literally the name of the chemical element. H. 8. You can actually notice something in all my poems that I animated on the screen now. Most of them are written on the 8 at 808. 888. I really work with this number because I am an 8 life path and I am born on a Saturn's day. So, but I don't recommend working with an 8 if you don't have already the blueprint in your life for it. Because it's a hard number. It's money, power, karma. And there's no money, there's no power, there's just karma. But there's no karma if you have the dharma. And the dharma is your life's calling. Mine is teaching. So, I just have to teach. I hope you learned something. I hope you're paying attention. Because this episode is a doozy. Anyway, let's get back to the episode.
So that creating the culture, the tradition of not only building the structures outside, but building the structures to create more power so we could access inside. And that's why the chambers and everything has to be dark, because you have to access the imagination. You have to access the mind. It was not about light. It was not about observing the beauty. It was about connecting with the deepest.
So we've got the arcs transmitting energy. I subscribe to the pyramid power plant theory.
Yeah, if you were to put one of those arcs in there and turn it on, I mean, even without adding, chemicals and everything else to create that energy, as is the theory, even beyond all that, the granite in there is piezoelectric.
That's the rose granite.
Right, the rose granite. So as that pressure is put on it, it produces electricity. It's in the middle of the desert. The pyramid itself is a giant electrostatic capacitor. If you stand on top of the pyramid and you take a bottle with a wet rag on it and hold it up, sparks are going to be shooting off the top of it, just because it's already building up static electricity. But then if you put an arc in the center of it, with this monoatomic substance, the superconductive substance, is going to really generate a lot of power.
And you throw a gold capstone on top.
Yeah, of course. It's just going to transmit it throughout the region. And really, I think there's some theories that Nikola Tesla, when he was developing his Wardenclyffe Tower and all of his research he was doing in Colorado Springs, Colorado, he was trying to mimic this process.
Sure, I mean, he built Wardenclyffe on top of an aquifer, just like Giza.
Right, just like Giza, yep.
And that's why in all the ancient places where you go, there are no windows in the temples. You have very, very hidden chambers with a lot of darkness, caves in the ground, going very deep inside the pyramid, because you shouldn't have any light, you shouldn't have any electricity, you shouldn't have anything of that, so you can actually connect with the mental, with the mind level, and use your own water, your own nitrogen, your own basis of what we call earth, fire, air, and water. Actually, they represent the oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and carbon. So the four of them are creating what we are. So when you go into the mind state, you're actually diving the waves of those particles. And what you eat is nourishing the waves of the particles. And I find amazing that the word govern, to govern yourself, govern is a Greek word that represents navigation. So the one that navigates is the governant, is the one that knows how to lead. So if you know how to dive in your mind and learn how to navigate your own mind, then you govern yourself. And that was the main philosophy of all the Atlantean tradition.
Alright, so I have a few personal notes I want to add to all these segments. First, the Tesla Tower. Well, you can actually go back if you missed it, but when the guys start speaking about the Wardenclyffe Tower and about Tesla, I actually put a poem, and I'm just putting them and not narrating them, so you can read them yourselves. If you are interested, if not, ignore it. But something happened during that time frame. In the years when Tesla was testing his tower, because supposedly it's an energy capacitor, right? So that energy can be contained and then released. Supposedly purely theoretical, right? And he was testing that in a few years, a relative few years. And what's interesting is that in that same period of time, there was this Tunguska event in the other side of the world in Siberia, where basically a sonic boom just destroyed a large chunk of earth, and there was a population of people called the Evenki people that were affected by this. And I think it's so interesting. Enki, Enlil, Anunnaki, you know that story. And as a result, nobody knows this as far as I'm concerned. I think I'm the only one peddling this idea. So let's just get the record straight, okay? You heard it from me first. But this Tesla Wardenclyffe Tower sonic boom connection and Tunguska event with Siberia and the Ruderalis plant, which the Ruderalis is like it's a smaller version adapted for colder climates where it's just cold and there is sun, there is light, but it's just cold and the atmosphere is not, the soil is not that rich, whatever. You know, it's just a smaller version of the normal. And the Tunguska event actually created that energy pulse, that energy blast, actually created a Ruderalis auto-flowering strain that through modern day breeding, it literally ended up in each and every herb, which is now permeating the consciousness of fucking gorillions of people. I don't know. But then again, the small hats and the CIA started to experiment and add stuff to the genetic breeding, and modern versions just they can actually cause psychosis, which is wild. I've seen some news in America after it has been legalized and monetized, and you can buy stocks with this stuff. It's just it's kind of impressive to me that they find a way to ruin everything. Anyway, I mean, I guess it's their job as adversaries. Anyway, the second note I have is about the Pyramid of Giza. So, you know that the pyramid has 4 sides, right? But did you know that that's actually wrong? There's 1 day per year when the sun lines up with, I don't know. I wish I learned mathematics. I wish I paid more attention in school. But there is 1 day when the light reveals that the pyramid has a total of 8 sides. The angle is very, very, very small. Like, you can't really tell with the naked eye. But it is factual. The pyramid has 8 sides. And I also find that very interesting. Anyway, back to the episode.
So that whole massive block that people put a tape measure to, go, it's the longest block on the Giza, it's actually made of red bricks, and it's just had limestone smeared all over it. Look at that. it almost looks like there's a bed of concrete underneath as well. God, it's just so so mad, isn't it?
Here's where I get tripped up. Is I can buy into that, the fact that there's electricity flowing around the ancient world, but what were they powering?
I think they were powering the same things we power today. I think by some accounts, the Earth was as populated and as advanced as it is today.
Wow, that's a big claim.
It's a huge claim. I'm willing to make it because there is evidence for that.
And this is where my personal issue begins.
Dumb yet, but I don't understand how this works. So this is below, and there's buildings and houses, then there's a bridge, and on this bridge there's buildings and houses on top. So are the buildings built on the bridge?
The mud flood, many say, was a deliberate attempt to wipe out Tartaria from history, hiding their advanced technology and knowledge. During the early 19th century, strange events were reported worldwide. Cities were being dug out from layers of mud and debris. Buildings were being revealed that were covered to their rooftops in mud. A global cataclysmic event buried entire civilizations, erasing them from history. But here is where it gets rather unsettling. The Tartarian Empire, an empire often depicted in old maps, was an advanced civilization that existed across Europe and Asia. They built architectural marvels, had access to advanced technology, and were able to harness energy from the atmos.
Who were the Tartarians? The official history is hiding a major world power which existed as late as the 19th century. Tartary was a country with its own flag, its own government, and its own place on the map. Its territory covered most of the modern world we know today, yet somehow it was ever so quietly incorporated into Russia and some other countries.
Central Station. They took all this stone and they brought it up to Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. You believe that? They didn't even have a train system going up there yet. And they left it out there for years, just to see if it could withstand the New York weather before settling on this Indiana limestone. What a beautiful story. I didn't even know they had AI back then.
Make it make sense. 1912. 1912. You believe in this? You believe in this? 1912. We'll get to that inside. This is the world famous whisper room. See people standing in the corner. You can whisper and hear on the other side and see if it works. Make it make sense. Nope. No one heard it.
Does this make sense to who? To who? People? Windows. Windows? Make it make sense. Come on. Come on. Come on, Grand Central Station. Constellation on the ceiling was done backwards, allegedly, with this stuff hanging off the wall. 1912. 1912. That makes sense? Come on. Come on. Make it make sense. Like I said, if you don't stop and look up, you miss these things. Who is that? What are they doing? Come on. Come on. Holding a serpent? Come on. With these windows? Come on. With that entrance? What's on that?
and you can think whatever you want. But brother, we cannot build like this today. This is the palace of Venera, located in Italy, and they say it was built in 1658. Just look at the design. Just look at it. What kind of technique is they using? The building is so wide you cannot find a close-up of it anywhere on the internet. The best you're gonna get is an aerial shot like this. But when you look at the original design, you realize that the palace is actually a city.
Can you see that? It goes all the way down Atlantic. What was down there? What was going on back then? Come on. Across the street from this thing. Damn right. Goes down the whole block. The Armory. Do they have anything to do with each other? King's Highway? What is that? That makes sense? That makes sense, huh? They just added that. Come on. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Who are they looking out for? Queens, where I'm living now? I'm from Brooklyn, Kings County. I live in Queens. I'm royalty. Make it make sense, New York City. Damn right. On a busy day in New York City. Look at that archway. Let's get into it, man. Come on. Sound off. Am I nuts? Am I nuts? Kings County? Come on, man. Sound off in the comments. Damn right. What are they doing? Look, where's the guy with the bow and arrow? Make it make sense, New York City. What was going on down there? What was going on back then? 1891. Make it make sense,
There's
man.
even evidence of nuclear detonations in the ancient world at places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, even on Easter Island. And by the way, this is something you never hear about. So Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa in India, there was a script that was found. The only other place we find that exact same script is on Easter Island, which is on the exact opposite side of the globe.
Right.
You know, so there was clearly a worldwide advanced civilization that was going on. Harry Truman, when he wrote in his diary entry that, by the way, Harry Truman was a past Grand Master of Missouri for Freemasonry. He was a 33rd degree Freemason, and he was a Templar. And when he wrote in his diary entry about the discovering of the atomic bomb, he says, "We have discovered an ancient weapon."
I didn't know he said that.
Yeah, those were his exact words. "We have discovered an ancient weapon."
And these texts you're talking about, they do talk about a sky filled with fire.
Absolutely. Oppenheimer was a Sanskrit scholar.
Yes.
That's why when he said, "I've become death, the destroyer of worlds," that's directly from the Mahabharata.
Yes.
And books like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, they say things like, it talks about atomic detonations. It says, Gurkha, flying his powerful Vimana, hurled a single projectile with all the power of the universe. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and Ankadas. A pottery broke without apparent cause. Elephants burst into flame and ran madly. The birds croaked madly. After a few days had passed over, all foodstuff became infected. Hair and nails began to fall out.
Sounds like radiation poisoning.
Radiation poisoning. The soldiers threw themselves in the streams to wash themselves and their equipment. Clouds roared upward, showering gravel. I mean, these were all the descriptions of this weapon. And by the way, the Vimanas were these flying craft, you know. So these are in ancient texts. These were things that the Nazis were studying, that Ahnenerbe were studying to try to develop this. And when they were developing their V2 program. that Oppenheimer, or that was in charge of, and then he was brought over to establish the NASA program for the
Von Braun.
Werner von Braun. Sorry, not Oppenheimer. Werner von Braun. He was in charge of the V2 program. He was brought over to develop Saturn V for NASA. But again, we're talking about ancient technology, and there is plenty of evidence of this around the ancient world, and it's mentioned in the text, the ancient texts. So I think the world was a lot more advanced than anyone's willing to talk about. I think that there was this mass cataclysm. I mean, just like today, most of the major cities were on the coast. As sea levels rose 300 feet, it just erased everything. And then all that was left over was the myths and some areas of survival.
All right, so I already told you that this year is very important from a couple of perspectives, namely the astrological one. But now let's talk a bit about, I'm not even sure what they call the actual field of this, but there is something weird happening with the magnetic poles of the Earth. So the North Pole is, think about it, it's probably in the north. The South Pole is in the south, but there is a certain issue here. The North Pole started to kind of drift off its axis, and now, as we speak in 2026, it's somewhere in Siberia. It basically moved, and what happens when these poles are traversing, and by the way, this all started in 1990s, so suspiciously when I was born, around when I was born, in like the mid-90s. And this year it literally started to accelerate even more. I mean, it's already... Anyway, the point is, when the poles are traversing, something weird happens with the Earth. Did you know that the moon is the reason that we have tide and riptide? You know, flux, reflux, with the seas, the movement of the seas, is because the moon, as the artificial satellite of the Earth, controls how the water moves, because the water is held together by the gravity of the core. And, you know, it doesn't really spill out into the whatever. If you take the spheric worldview as a fact, let's just consider it. Maybe you are some flat earthers over there. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't care. The shape is not that important. But the physics are. So we have the moon, we have the flux, reflux. And, you know, if you live near the sea, you can actually go out when there's a clear sky. You can go out, look at the sea, and then track when the moon starts to come up on the horizon. See exactly when the seas are getting restless. You can actually track this movement in real time and confirm it. It's pretty wild. I should have learned about physics like that, you know, not from a fucking textbook. Anyway, so we have the moon, we have the sea, and we have this year as something incredible, something so important for humanity. Why? The moon in tarot is actually subconscious, and the whole effect of the poles traversing is that the water of the planet might be destabilized a bit. And in this destabilization, a global cataclysm might or might not occur. And it might occur not instantly, not like a flash flood in a month or something, but occur in stages, slowly, slowly, slowly. We can already see weather events that are so freak. But then again, there is also the probability and the possibility that they manipulate the weather with sonic heaters, with HARP antenna arrays, with ACE cuts, with Nexrad. There's so many. But both of those hypotheses are valid and possible. And the pole shift, the pole reversal, it's unfortunately or fortunately coming. And you can actually even watch on Netflix a movie that was released about an AI simulation of a flood that keeps repeating again. I think this was made to enter the consciousness of the, of the populace of humanity about this possibility, about this event and about its occurrence. Because think about it. Why are the elites building bunkers, underground bunkers? It's to withstand something like this and maybe a nuclear something. But if they had the possibility to go on Mars and inhabit other planets, which they don't, they would have done that. They would have just left us to our whatever. But they can't escape. They're stuck here with us. And they still screw up the world and do the Epstein stuff. Anyway. So we have the pole shift, which is imminent. We have the cataclysm, the flood, which is imminent. But at the end of this, a new world would emerge. A new world, a free world. A world with free energy. A world in which you can be happy to live in. And hopefully you don't have to pay to exist. You can even look at the weather right now. If you're in Romania, you probably haven't seen the sun all winter long. Or if you have seen it, it was just one day before the planes and the chemtrails started and they covered the skies again. It's because light is consciousness, light is information, and you are water and you are a vessel of holding the light or information. And obviously they want to block that. They also want to tell you that we're freezing and all this, like a global ice age or global warming or climate change. I don't know. I really lost track of their narratives because at some point they realized nothing was working. But the point is, if you see any climate agenda, you are the carbon they want to reduce. Just keep that in mind. Let's get back to this episode, okay?
One of the things that we point out when we go to Egypt, for example, when we do the tours in Egypt, and this is not a well-known or popular theory, but we believe that the Valley of the Kings, for example, was originally survival bunkers. Because most people think of them as just these tombs built into the cliff sides, but what they don't realize is all those tombs are connected by these tunnels that go deep down into the earth, where they're all connected. And it would have taken thousands of people to carve out all these tunnels. And if you were a pharaoh and you're trying to find a place to hide yourself where you're buried, you're certainly not going to hire thousands of workers to create a bunch of tunnels so that you could be buried down there. I mean, the secret would have gotten out right away. So one of the things that the order also discovered when it first went to Egypt is that there were these massive tunnel networks that existed between Giza and Saqqara. All right? Saqqara is where the step pyramid of Zoser is. That word Saqqara is actually where we get the word sacred from.
Okay.
But there are tunnels that stretch that whole way, large tunnels. That area, that underground in the ancient Egyptian language was known as Ras Tau, which just meant underworld. When the Templars discovered this, they brought that knowledge back with them, and they transliterated the Egyptian Ras Tau into the Latin language they're familiar with. So Ras became rose, and Tau became cross.
Oh my goodness.
So they adopted the symbol of the rose cross to talk about the secret underground area of Egypt. And then when they went and set up the cathedrals when they started building the cathedrals of Europe, and they were bringing back this Egyptian knowledge, and they were trying to set up the cathedrals in the same manner of the Egyptian temples. And they put their alchemical knowledge, like you could go to Notre Dame Cathedral, the front doors of Notre Dame Cathedral, they have all the stages of alchemy depicted, which nobody knew at that time except for groups like the Sabaeans and the Druze in the Middle East. So it's very clear that the Templars were associated with them and bringing this knowledge back. But they set up the cathedrals, so if you view them from the sky, they're crosses, but then they put the rose windows in them, right, to make them rose crosses.
Right.
Ras Tau, that knowledge from Egypt, from the underworld of Egypt.
So the Rosicrucians are the followers of...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Templar Order, when they created the Rosicrucian Order in Germany, that symbol, the Rose Cross, was just pointing back to the Ras Tau, the underworld of Egypt.
How many times do you think they've actually reset society? That question sounds crazy until you start seeing the pattern they keep trying to hide. Klaus Schwab was already talking about a great reset right before 2020. Then suddenly the whole world gets shoved into a new normal. And if you zoom out a little, you start noticing something uncomfortable. This isn't the first time a reset has been pushed. Look at history. We lost Egypt's advanced knowledge. We lost the Library of Alexandria. We lost whole civilizations like Tartaria, just wiped from the record like they never existed. Every time humanity gets close to waking up, close to remembering what we once knew, something happens, and the slate gets wiped clean. No memories, no context, no explanation. That's why people call us a species with amnesia. We're here, but we have no idea how we got here or what came before us, because someone keeps hitting the reset button. And here's the strange part. 2020 wasn't just a reset attempt. It was also a wake-up call. If life hadn't been disrupted, a lot of people who were completely asleep would have stayed asleep forever. Humans run on routine. As long as the routine feels safe, we don't question anything. But when they try to force massive change, they risk waking people up, which is exactly what happened. And now they're trying to shove everyone back into a comfortable fog, redefining normal, flipping reality upside down, making you beg for stability, and using that desperation to settle you back into silence. So, here's the real question for you. If this pattern keeps repeating, if history keeps getting erased, rewritten, and replaced, how many resets do you think we've actually lived through? And how many more do you think they're planning?
This is just a theory, not a fact. If you don't know how to balance your two eyes, then you will always perceive a fake reality.
You will always just receive information that is not the right one that you need to observe. And that's when people get stuck in a normal life that always see the same thing and they don't perceive the magic of it. And then those who we start to balance the eyes, you can see the magic of reality, and suddenly the right people comes and the right information and the right situations, and everything is like so magical. And it's like, how is possible that all of these things are happening to you? And I'm like, well, because I'm practicing constantly to see in a different way, to inform myself in a different way. And then what you hear is that the other alchemy that is so important to nourish the pineal, the seed, is the frequency. And it's very interesting, like the main technology in Atlantean times was sound, was music and words. And one of the reasons why was that is because all the data and the information that we have in our bodies is frequency based. So we are vibration, and the frequency of that vibration is the one that administrates data. So if you have constantly like that, it's one information. But if you have you have a different kind of frequency. That's the frequency of in which you create a package of information. So if you add consonants to that, you create a package of data, which is now an idea. So the way you use the words, the way you pronounce them, the way you intend them when you say them, is shifting, transforming the minds of people. And that's the famous abracadabra, the hocus pocus, is the famous I create as I speak. So all the ancient wisdom has that, with the shamans saying words, the singings of in ceremonies. Sometimes the words don't have to make sense in your language; they have to make sense for your brain. And he was saying that today, everything that we hear, everything that we perceive from music and so on, it's in a frequency that doesn't allow you to break the spell of your consciousness.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and everything that you see in TV, in YouTube, whatever, everything you hear in the music, in the news, or whatever you hear and you perceive is conditioning the seed and transforming the alchemy that you are doing is not alchemy, it's just chemistry. So when you create just chemistry, there's no purpose, there's no meaning on it. You're just mixing stuff, and that's what keeps us trapped and controlled. But it's only on us. It's not someone trying to do it. Sometimes people, of course, do it on purpose, but the only reason why we get control is because we are not in tune. So he said that the preparation for the next years is going to be an alchemical journey on trying to balance that, on trying to process the sight, the hearing, and to balance eyes and words. And he said that there are many spells from it that we are defending them like if it's a virus in our system. And we have to recalibrate them.
Yeah.
In the 1930s, the Rothschild-Rockefeller Alliance, they began funding scientific studies to look at how musical frequencies can prepare the masses for war. And that's because they wanted to control people. They want that mind control programming. And so in 1938, there was a gentleman named Harold Burroughs-Meyer, and he was a theatrical designer and a sound engineer. And he began developing techniques that would control the emotional response of audiences and to create mass hysteria. And so from there, you have this, this Rockefeller-Rothschild alliance. What they were doing is, not only were they looking at ways to steer the masses, but they wanted to change the standard tuning of A to 440 hertz. So in 1939, they began funding Joseph Goebbels, who was the Nazi propagandist. And at that time, Joseph Goebbels, he wanted to change the standard tuning of A. And so he organized a meeting in London to do that. Now, up until that time, the standard tuning of A was set at 435 hertz, and that was from a conference in Vienna in 1889. But they wanted to shift it to 440 hertz. And so Radio Berlin approached the British Standard Association and asked if they would organize this conference in London, which was a total setup in which, you know, the powers that be had control of what the outcome was going to be. And they didn't invite any of the French musicians because they were opposed to 440 hertz. And then the organizers of the conference, you know, they interviewed musicians, the instrument makers, the physicists, and then also the sound engineers. And if any of those people were against 440 hertz, then they weren't invited to the conference. So it was all controlled. And, you know, as a result, it's not surprising that the standard tuning of A was changed to 440 hertz. And that happened June 1939, just months before World War II broke out. And the timing of that is no coincidence because 440 hertz is a destructive frequency. And that, you know, it can retrain our thoughts towards disharmony, disruption, and disunity.
We need to be mindful of what we're putting in our environment, what we're listening to, what we're consuming on a day-to-day basis. This music is frequency programming. It's programming you to react. It's programming you to remain in a place of fear, a place of doubt, a place of lack, a place of scarcity. This is frequency programming, and people are not aware of the malevolent forces that are out there trying to control you every single day. So be mindful of what you're listening to. Be mindful of what you're allowing within your aura.
Look, it's all complex, but know this. They weaponized music. They weaponized sound, because the Logos was the primordial sound. Om. In Romanian, Om literally means human. It's also the tallest mountain we have in our country. Do you think this is by chance? Do you really think this is by chance? Come on, man. What they wanted to hide was... It's so simple. Tartaria was a global empire. We had free energy. And you know who the emperor was? Motherfucking Christ himself. This is what they hide. This is why they go ahead and they tell you all this stuff, and they released all the Epstein files, and everyone sees the chaos that was already there since Babylon and probably even earlier. Because they want to have their new world order. And they cause the chaos beforehand to impose their order. But this can all be bypassed. If humanity chooses right,